The fortress stood alone in the vast expanse of red rock and dust, its walls battered and scarred by years of relentless siege but unyielding in its defiance, a last bastion of human survival on this hostile alien world. The winds howled around it, carrying the scent of scorched earth and ash, as though even the planet itself wished to erase the humans who clung so fiercely to life within its walls. This was the place where humanity had made its final stand, the stronghold that had withstood armies and monsters and horrors beyond comprehension. It was here that they would either endure or vanish into the annals of forgotten history. Commander Lyra Hale moved along the battlements, her gaze sweeping over the horizon where the enemy forces lay hidden in the shadows, just beyond the reach of their sensors. She was a warrior hardened by years of combat, her face lined with the marks of 100 battles, her eyes fierce and unyielding. She had seen comrades fall, seen worlds crumble, seen hope flicker and fade, yet somehow always managed to carry on. Around her, the fortress buzzed with the quiet efficiency of soldiers who knew that their lives hung by a thread, that each day might be their last. The silence was broken by the sharp crackle of the comm system as her second-in-command, Lieutenant Morrow, approached. "Commander," he said, his voice low, "the scouts report movement on the western ridge. They're gathering for another assault." Lyra nodded, her expression unchanging as she absorbed the news. They had been expecting this. The enemy never relented, never ceased in its pursuit of total annihilation. And every time the humans repelled them, they returned stronger, more determined to crush the last vestiges of resistance. She knew that one day they might succeed, that eventually the fortress walls would fall. But not today. Not while she still drew breath. "Prepare the defenses," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of command. "We hold this line. No matter what they throw at us, we do not let them breach these walls." Morrow nodded, a flicker of determination sparking in his eyes. He had been with her since the beginning, since the first days of the invasion, when they had scrambled to fortify this place with whatever they could find. He knew the stakes, understood the gravity of their mission. They were not just defending a fortress, they were safeguarding the last hope of humanity. As the soldiers moved into position along the battlements, securing weapons and reinforcing barricades, Lyra took a moment to steady herself, drawing in a deep breath. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, the knowledge that countless lives depended on her ability to lead, to inspire, to protect. She had never asked for this responsibility, but she had accepted it willingly, shouldering the burden of survival, with a fierce determination that had carried her through every trial. In the distance, a low rumble echoed across the plains, the first sign of the approaching enemy. Shadows began to coalesce on the horizon, figures moving in the dim light as the enemy advanced, shrouded in darkness and malice. They were a sight to behold, towering beasts of metal and flesh, their forms twisted and grotesque, as though they had been shaped by nightmares rather than any natural evolution. And leading them at the forefront of the horde was the Overlord, a creature of unfathomable power, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence as cold and pitiless as the void. The soldiers around her braced themselves, their expressions grim but resolute, as they watched the enemy draw closer. They had faced these creatures before, had fought them tooth and nail in countless battles. They knew the taste of fear, the stench of death, the cold inevitability of their fate. Yet they stood unwavering, ready to fight until their last breath. Lyra raised her voice, calling out to her soldiers. "Remember what we fight for. We stand not just for ourselves, but for every soul that has fallen, every life that has been taken. We are the last line, the final bastion. If we fall, humanity falls with us. But as long as we hold this ground, as long as we refuse to yield, there is hope." A cheer rose up from the soldiers, a fierce primal cry that echoed across the plains, carrying with it the defiance, the resilience of a species that refused to be extinguished. They were outnumbered, outmatched, facing an enemy of unimaginable strength. But they had something the enemy lacked, a fire, a spirit that could not be broken. As the enemy forces closed in, the air grew thick with tension, the silence charged with the anticipation of battle. Lyra gripped her weapon, her gaze fixed on the approaching horde, her body taut with readiness. She knew that this would be a brutal fight, that they would be pushed to their limits and beyond. But she also knew that they would endure, that they would fight with every ounce of strength they possessed. The first shots rang out, breaking the silence as blaster fire lit up the darkness, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. The fortress walls shook with the impact, but held firm, their defenses reinforced and unyielding. The soldiers fired with precision, each shot a testament to their training, their discipline, their unwavering resolve. Lyra fought at the forefront, her movements a blur of lethal efficiency, as she engaged the enemy with a skill honed by years of combat. She was a force of nature, a warrior driven by a purpose that transcended survival. Around her, her soldiers fought with a ferocity that defied the odds, their faces set with the grim determination of those who knew that they were fighting for more than just themselves. The battle raged on with an intensity that seemed almost surreal, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning metal. The fortress walls were battered, shaken, but they held a testament to the resilience of those who defended them. The enemy pushed forward, relentless and unyielding, but the humans met them at every turn, repelling wave after wave with a strength that seemed almost supernatural. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, Lyra knew that they had endured, that they had once again held the line. The enemy forces retreated, pulling back into the shadows as the humans stood victorious, battered and bruised but unbroken. They had faced the darkness and they had prevailed, proving once again that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But Lyra knew that this was only a reprieve, that the enemy would return stronger and more determined. Yet she also knew that as long as they held this ground, as long as they refused to yield, there was hope. And that was all she needed. The night settled once again over the fortress, casting long shadows across its battered walls as the soldiers worked tirelessly to repair the defenses that had taken the brunt of the day's assault. The ground was littered with the remnants of the enemy's war machines, twisted metal, shattered armor, and the faint remnants of an alien substance that shimmered under the moonlight. The quiet was thick, oppressive, a reminder that this lull was only temporary, that the Overlord and its monstrous horde were merely regrouping, plotting their next move. In the command center, Commander Lyra Hale stood before the large, flickering tactical map projected onto the wall. It displayed the fortress, the surrounding area, and a shifting array of red markers indicating known enemy positions. She scrutinized it with an intensity that belied her exhaustion, her mind racing through strategies, tactics, anything that could give her team an edge in the coming battle. She knew the Overlord well enough by now to recognize that it would not retreat without striking again, and harder than before. Lieutenant Morrow entered, his face drawn but his gaze unwavering. He had a datapad in hand, filled with reports from the scouts who had ventured out under the cover of darkness. He handed it to Lyra without a word, his silence conveying the gravity of what he had seen. She glanced down, her eyes scanning the report, and felt a chill settle over her. The Overlord's forces had multiplied, regrouping with reinforcements from distant outposts. The horde now circled the fortress like predators stalking wounded prey, and the numbers were staggering. But it wasn't just the increase in soldiers that unsettled her. It was the formation, the precision with which they moved, the clear signs that the Overlord was preparing for a decisive strike. "They're shifting their strategy," Morrow said quietly, his voice laced with a mix of dread and respect for the enemy's cunning. "They're not just trying to break through anymore. They're planning to surround us, box us in, leave no path for escape." Lyra nodded, her mind racing as she calculated their odds. The Overlord's growing impatient. "It's willing to risk everything to wipe us out in one stroke." Morrow glanced at her, a hint of hesitation in his eyes. If they manage to breach the wall," Lyra cut him off, her voice firm. "We won't give them that chance. As long as one of us stands, the line holds." They stood in silence for a moment, each understanding the weight of the other's thoughts. This was no longer a battle of attrition. It was an all-or-nothing gambit, a showdown that would determine the fate of the last stronghold and, by extension, humanity itself. Outside, the soldiers prepared as best as they could. Weapons were cleaned, armor reinforced, and the air buzzed with a tense energy, the kind that only appeared before a do-or-die battle. There was no laughter, no small talk, only the quiet resolve of warriors who knew that the dawn might bring their end. In the barracks, a young soldier named Jace sat alone, his rifle propped against his shoulder as he gazed out at the starlit sky. He had joined the resistance only months ago, drawn by stories of valor and the need to protect what was left of humanity. Now, faced with the grim reality of the battlefield, he felt a creeping fear settle over him. But alongside that fear was a fierce determination, a burning desire to prove himself, to stand with his comrades and defend their last hope. Another soldier, an older veteran named Cal, approached him, his scarred face softened by a rare smile. "Scared, kid?" he asked, settling down beside Jace. Jace nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, More than I'd like to admit. Cal chuckled, his laughter deep and gravelly. Good. Means you understand what we're up against. Fear keeps you sharp. Makes you think twice before doing something stupid. Jace managed a small smile, finding comfort in Cal's presence. The veteran had fought in more battles than he could count, had faced down horrors that would have broken lesser men, yet he remained unbroken, a pillar of strength for the younger soldiers to lean on. As the two sat in silence, the faint rumble of distant engines echoed through the night, growing louder, closer. The soldiers looked up, their faces pale as they realized that the enemy was moving now. Lyra emerged from the command center, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Everyone, to your stations. This is it. We hold the line. No one breaks formation. The soldiers scrambled into position, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared to face the onslaught. The fortress fell silent, each person holding their breath as they waited for the inevitable clash. And then, with a deafening roar, the Overlord's forces surged forward, a tide of metal and flesh that rolled across the plains like a storm. The soldiers opened fire, their weapons lighting up the night as they unleashed a barrage of blaster fire into the advancing horde. The enemy responded in kind, beams of energy cutting through the darkness as the two sides collided in a brutal, unrelenting battle. Lyra fought at the forefront, her every movement calculated and deadly as she cut down one enemy after another. She was a force to be reckoned with, her presence a rallying point for her soldiers as they fought with everything they had. Around her, the air was thick with the sounds of battle, the roar of engines, the clash of metal, the screams of the dying. The Overlord himself moved through the battlefield, his massive form towering over the soldiers, his eyes fixed on Lyra with a cold, predatory intensity. He knew that she was the heart of the defense, the one person whose fall would shatter the humans' resolve. With a low growl, he began to make his way toward her, his every step sending tremors through the ground. Lyra spotted him through the chaos, her gaze meeting his across the battlefield. She knew that this was it, the moment that would decide the fate of the stronghold. She steeled herself, her grip tightening on her weapon as she prepared to face him. But as the Overlord closed in, a flash of movement caught her eye. It was Jace, the young soldier, his face set with determination as he charged forward, his weapon blazing as he aimed at the Overlord. Lyra felt a surge of pride and fear, pride for his bravery, fear for his life. She shouted a warning, but it was lost in the cacophony of battle. The Overlord turned, his eyes narrowing as he regarded the young soldier with disdain. With a swipe of his massive arm, he sent Jace sprawling, his weapon clattering to the ground as he struggled to rise. Lyra moved to intervene, her heart pounding as she realized that she would not reach him in time. But before the Overlord could strike, Cal appeared, his face twisted with rage as he threw himself at the enemy, his weapon firing in rapid succession. The Overlord staggered, caught off guard by the ferocity of the assault, and Lyra seized the opportunity, charging forward with a roar as she closed the distance. Together, they fought, a desperate trio of warriors facing down a foe far beyond their strength. Their movements were a dance of survival, each one protecting the other as they struggled to bring the Overlord down. It was a battle of wills, of courage against overwhelming odds, and as the dawn began to break over the horizon, they knew that they had given everything. The Overlord fell with a final, shuddering roar, his form collapsing into the dust as the remaining enemy forces faltered, their morale broken. The soldiers cheered, their voices ringing out across the battlefield as they realized that they had won, that they had survived yet another day. Lyra looked at her comrades, her heart swelling with pride as she saw the resilience, the strength that had carried them through. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken. They were humanity's last stand, and as long as they stood together, they would endure. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, Lyra gathered her remaining officers and called a meeting. They huddled together in the command center, their faces lined with fatigue, their bodies worn from the relentless battle, but their spirits unbroken. They knew that this moment was fragile, that the peace they had fought so hard to secure was only temporary, and that the enemy would return, stronger and more determined. "We need a new strategy," Lyra began, her voice steady despite the weariness that weighed on her shoulders. "The Overlord's death has bought us time, but it's only a matter of days before his forces regroup. We can't keep waiting for them to attack. We need to take the fight to them. The officers exchange glances, their faces a mixture of determination and uncertainty. They had grown accustomed to defending the fortress, to fighting from behind its walls, but the idea of venturing into enemy territory, of confronting the horde on its own ground, was a daunting one. One of the younger officers, a woman named Sarah, spoke up, her voice filled with conviction. "Commander, I agree. We've been on the defensive for too long. We've proven that we can hold our ground. But if we want to end this once and for all, we need to be willing to take risks." Lyra nodded, her gaze sweeping over the faces of her officers, each one of them a testament to the resilience that had carried them this far. Then it settled. "We prepare for an offensive. We take the fight to them. Push them back. Make them fear us the way we've feared them." The officers murmured their agreement, their expressions hardening as they realized the enormity of the task before them. They would need to gather supplies, secure transport, and devise a strategy that would allow them to navigate the hostile territory that lay beyond the fortress walls. It was a daunting prospect, but they were united in their purpose, bound by a shared determination to end the siege once and for all. Over the next few days, the fortress buzzed with activity as the soldiers prepared for the offensive. Weapons were sharpened, armor repaired, supplies gathered in preparation for the journey ahead. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of excitement and apprehension as they readied themselves for the unknown. They knew that this mission would be dangerous, that they were venturing into enemy territory with no guarantee of survival, but they also knew that this was their chance to make a difference, to strike a blow that would resonate across the galaxy. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The soldiers gathered in the courtyard, their faces set with determination as they shouldered their weapons and prepared to march into the unknown. Lyra stood at the front of the group, her gaze sweeping over her comrades, each one of them a testament to the strength and resilience that had brought them this far. "Today, we take a stand," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will not be cowed, will not be broken. We are fighters, survivors, and we will not rest until we have secured peace for ourselves and for those who come after us." A cheer rose up from the soldiers, a fierce, primal cry that echoed across the fortress walls, carrying with it the determination and courage that had brought them this far. They knew that this journey would be perilous, that they were venturing into the heart of darkness, but they were united in their purpose, bound by a shared resolve to protect what remained of humanity. As they set out, the fortress loomed behind them, a silent sentinel, a symbol of the strength that had carried them through the darkest of times. They marched across the barren landscape, their footsteps echoing in the stillness, a testament to the courage that had brought them this far. And as they disappeared into the horizon, Lyra couldn't help but feel a surge of hope, a belief that, despite the odds, they would prevail. They were humanity's last stand, a force of resilience and courage, and they would not rest until they had secured a future for those who would come after them.